So the global research will tell us that 1 in 4 of us will suffer with our mental health. But here in the UAE, a number of studies pegs that at 1 in 3. But if you're working in the PR industry, one study in 2020 put that at 70% of professionals working in PR and communications were struggling with their mental health. That's almost twice the global average. So is it really so dark on the dark side, as journalists love to call the PR industry? I'm delighted today to be joined on the Mental Space podcast by Kate Midttun, CEO of Acorn Strategy, Chairperson of MEPRA, the Middle East PR Association, and a judge for the Mental Awards 2023. Now, the Mental Awards are there to hero organisations, public and private sector, individuals, leaders, anyone who is advancing the cause of mental health in their organisations or developing projects that help their teams thrive. And you can find out more about the awards in the show notes. Kate, welcome to the Mental Space.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
I'm going to start with that kind of question I had in the intro, which is it really as dark on the dark side? And I apologise. And having left journalism and then went to work for a strategic communications company, I actually know there is so much light on the dark side and so many talented people on the dark side, but there's an awful lot of hard work there as well.
So I mean, I think the results are obviously staggering, and there's no doubt that we have a lot of issues that we need to fix within the industry. I don't think we're alone, but I think we have some work to do to get to the right place.
What do you think the factors are underpinning those statistics? I mean, and as you say, you're right to say that actually PR and communications are perhaps no different than many other industries. I was sat with a roundtable with the hospitality industry yesterday, and they obviously have perhaps different pressures on their feet all the time, very, very long hours. But I remember my time working in communications. You guys work some long hours too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many factors that go into it, and I think there's absolutely the pressure from clients. There's also quite often the pressure from a corporate entity that wants to make sure that the numbers are stacking up, and obviously businesses have to be profitable, but there's also the toll that takes on employees. And sometimes when we see things like even a simple thing like a delay in a contract coming through, that means that revenue isn't seen for that month that everyone had anticipated it.
Yeah.
Being able to resource and as agency leaders, it's quite difficult to manage those things. But unfortunately, what we see within the industry is that there are people who are coming in, they're getting exhausted, they're working all hours. It's not, when we walk through the halls of, the media zone or the media authority, and you see the lights on in the agencies still, and people working away to be able to meet those deadlines. And so I think it comes from a lot of different angles, but I also think that there is a responsibility of the industry and a responsibility for people who are leading businesses to try and balance that out and make sure that they're taking the right approach for their employees.
So you're chairperson with MEPRA, so you'll be seeing this across the industry.
Yeah.
What are the conversations in MEPRA around mental health? What are the initiatives or steps that have perhaps been taken over the last 3 years, and how is the conversation getting perhaps louder or more urgent?
Yeah, so I think the first mental health survey we conducted was during COVID at the start of the pandemic, and we really wanted to understand what was happening within the industry and how people were feeling. Obviously, we could see on a global scale what was happening. We could understand what was happening commercially within the UAE and within the region. But we didn't know how individuals were feeling. So we did do a survey, and I think the results were quite staggering. And we were questioning people about how they felt about their work and their performance, their ability to conduct their job, but also how they felt on a daily basis. And and there were people who were really open and honest about their about issues with suicidal thoughts and depression in that survey. And I think particularly in this region where it's quite difficult for people to have those conversations, or there's still a lot of taboo around it, it was pretty eye-opening to see those kinds of results. So. Yeah. Immediately, we put in place the Employee Assistance Program, which offers a counselling service across the region. So all of our members could have access to that. And and be able to dial in. And I think the point, and actually I have to give credit to Scott Armstrong, who sponsored that personally, a wonderful Marcoms professional who she has battled with depression herself, and she said one person thinking about suicide is far too much. We've got to do something, and we take this on. And so she paid for that in the first year, and then that's something that we have offered as a standard for our members as a member benefit since then. So I think that point of one person is too many. We really need to be doing something. So we have got the employee assistance program in place, and then there's we do speak about it quite openly within the industry and try to tackle those things. I think as ever, I think we're quite good at PRing ourselves. We're quite good at putting the spin on things, and so I think I'd like to see it progress further, absolutely. And I think there's some big players in the industry who really should be being part of that conversation or contributing to it as well. So
we talk about one person, and often, through the conversations I've been having since I started Mentl, often we feel that we are the one person, and actually that we're alone. I mean, I don't have the figures about how many people work in the PR profession. I don't know how many employees there are under the MEPRA. But if you start doing the maths and you go 70%, according to a study by Burrell's, a major media agency out in the US, that's a lot. That's thousands of people, and that's actually the majority of us are actually struggling in this kind of private pandemic, rather than we're not the minority and you're not the one person. You're actually part of a majority of people who are now struggling.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I think 70% is, that's not just one person by any means. And I think we're at the start of what is a really, really important conversation. And I think there is so much more that needs to be done. And it's not just about an industry association either. I think it's everyone coming together. And I think the difficulty sometimes is that, there is a dynamic within the industry that is everything is urgent and everything has to be done right now.
How many presentations I worked on a Sunday night at 2:00 in the morning because the client wanted it at 9 a.m. on a Monday.
Exactly. And you don't want to be the agency that complains about that.
Yeah.
But likewise, there has to be a line drawn. How many campaigns or how many urgent deliverables have you turned around that have then sat on someone's desk for 3 weeks, or they are no longer important by the time that they see the light of day. So I think just calming down a little bit and taking some pace, but also I think there is a need for agencies to stand up and advocate more about what is going to get results, what is also going to, what is needed for employees within agencies to be able to reduce that 70%.
I thought what was fascinating is I looked into the research that MEPRA did and some of the statistics that you pulled out. And again, as a former business journalist, I always like stats and statistics and trying to make the business case for mental health.
Yeah.
Because it's not just a nice to have, it's actually a business fundamental. One of the figures that came out of your research was that 45% of the professionals that answered your survey said that mental health struggles had impacted their ability to do their work well. Yeah. So how important do you think it is for leaders to try and wake up to the fact that, okay, even if you don't feel it here, it's a good thing up there.
You feel it on the balance sheet.
It's on the P&L, yeah.
I think, one of the issues that we have in this region is there is a short-term nature to things. There is. I feel that, particularly, working in other countries, I feel like in this region, what we see is the short-term demand and the whether or not it's short-term demand for results on a campaign or short-term. Everything is not everything, but there are a lot of things that are driven by short-term results, and I think there is a little bit of a tendency to let long-term results slide because you can't always have perfect short-term results and perfect long-term results. And if that one person doesn't feel like they have continuity, or they're trying to get to the next role, or whatever it is, that quite often those things are sacrificed. And so it takes people with a long-term view, people who are invested in what they're doing, not just for today, but for the long term. And we do see it's quite transient. We've got 80% expats here, and that there is the focus on long term. I think it just isn't.
Do you think that's going to change? Because obviously, like, the demographics of the UAE is changing in degrees that we used to, and how many of us came for 2 years, and then we stay for 5, and then we stay for 10, and I'm now like in my 13th, 14th year.
Yeah.
But we were always on short-term visas, and now we've got a whole class of professionals that are either on green visas or even golden visas. And I think the UAE government wants people to stay longer and think more long-term.
Yeah.
There's always going to be a lag, but can you see the industry moving towards a more long-term view, or how do we snap ourselves out of the short-term thinking?
Yeah, I think, I don't know, where, as an agency...
It is I now remember, you are, Abu Dhabi's first female golden visa
the first
holder.
female in the investor category.
Yeah.
So I have a golden visa as well. And it is actually interesting how that, that shift, how much it changes. And, that look at, I've owned my own business for 13 years now. So it's not like I've ever had this, maybe I'm out in 2 years, but that shift of going from I'm renewing my visa every 3 years, and I hand my passport into HR like everyone else does and get that done. And it's almost like the reset of what am I going to do over the next 3 years, and what, am I actually going to be here for 3 years, and maybe that's it, or, what do I do next? And shifting to a 10-year visa, then I'm like, well, now I'm just here. I'm just here now.
Yeah.
And it's funny how, a sticker and a passport makes that mental shift for you.
Well, I mean, in my experience, I was lucky enough to get one as well. And I've gone from renting mentality to the point where I'm not in a position yet, but it's like, well, no, we'll buy. If we can buy, then we'll buy. So all of a sudden we have started thinking internally long term. Yeah. We're here for a long term. So
well, and I think, look at all of I think part of it has been the UAE has grown so quickly as well. All of the projects, and you as a journalist, I came in and worked on Yas
No longer
Island,
a journalist. I'm a storyteller now.
The amazing projects that we've worked on throughout that 15 years living in the country, they have always been driven by pace and how fast we can get them up and running. And I think the UAE has really, and the Middle East in general, is really just given that there is that weight behind it now. There's no need to prove what is possible. It's now what is next, and building that future as well. So I think what we're seeing is there's less stress around those really short term. I worked on Yas Island and developed, there's delivered 7 hotels and a racetrack and a golf course and a theme park in 22 months. So, those projects are just, it's not happening that way anymore. And I think there is almost, looking towards the future of what is going to happen, the 2031 plan and all of that, there is, we're looking towards future projects and future development. And with that, it gives people that view of, what are we going to do? It's not happening as quickly as I would like, as a strategy-led agency. We're always looking at, what are you trying to achieve over the next 3 to 5 years, and how do we help over the next year to achieve that? And sometimes it's just about how pretty is the social media campaign, and so I think there is a shift. I would like it to be faster. I think for everyone's everyone's peace of mind, and with that, I think there has to be a genuine desire to have long-term relationships between agencies and clients, and make sure that there is a strategic view of what's happening, and then therefore protecting employees on both sides, client and agency. I can't pretend it's all only agency side. It's certainly there's a lot of pressure in-house as well. So I think once some of that short term lifts, it becomes easier. But undoubtedly there's other things that can be fixed in the meantime.
It's an interesting time to be asking the question. We talk about short term, long term, because obviously this year and in December we've got COP22 coming. COP22, COP23, I can't remember which one it is. Lose count.
COP28?
COP28
Yes.
even, yeah. Yeah, so well informed there, Scott. But, we're going to be talking about ESG a lot.
Yes.
Obviously, the E is going to get a lot of focus, quite rightly, because of COP28. But the S, sustainability and social, when the human beings have got to form part of that argument. Yeah. And this feels to me like if you want a sustainable business rather than a short-term business, we've got to start taking this seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it all goes hand in hand ultimately, doesn't it? And I think there's really great, really great programs that you can sign up to that help focus on that. And we're currently going through our B Corp certification, and that's looking at how do you make a positive impact, and it starts internally. How do you look after your employees, and how do you share that information externally so that other people are benefiting from that as well? And that quite often it goes hand in hand with the environment as well, and education and all of those things. So, I also don't think it's all bad here. I think this, there are a lot of things that really make a big difference, and I think it's actually quite progressive here as well. And there's I see a lot more, work from anywhere policies coming out of this region, which make a big difference to people as well. Yeah. It would be great to see more on the human side as well.
When I asked you to become a judge for the Mentl Awards 2023, you didn't hesitate for a second. You just really, Scott, I'm in, love it. Yeah. Why? Why are you so passionate about this space? Like, either what's your journey been, or why did you say yes so quickly?
Yeah, I think it's so important. Mental health is so important. It's, at the end of the day, we are all just humans trying to, work through and where everyone is on their own journey, and mental health affects everyone, whether or not you're trying to help support someone else through it, or, or whether personally you've got your own struggles. And I think until we address that and make it common and, day-to-day language, we're talking about mental health as much as we do physical health, and we've got a big problem. And so I think the awards are really, really important for addressing that and making sure that that people are recognizing what excellence looks like in mental health and recognizing what that is at this point in time. But how do we get that better? And so next year, what am I going to do? Like, what's my entry this year? What's my entry next year? And until we recognize and celebrate excellence, we're not going to achieve it. And until it's, as long as it's a taboo subject, and as long as people are thinking, it's not I haven't got a problem, so it's not my problem. Yeah. I think as long as we have that, we're not going to progress. And it's so important. It's so important that we're talking about this and making it part of our day-to-day. And I also think in the Middle East, as employers, we have such a big responsibility to our teams because there are so many expats. We are the community. Yeah. We are the family. Sometimes we are the only, the people that you work with might be the only people that you see or speak to for days, sometimes weeks. And there, it can also be the support network. And if you're sick or if you've got something going on, you're quite often resolving that with your colleagues as well. And I think to ignore that is, I think it's pretty. What word would we use for that? It's really lacking in responsibility. It's
I mean, look, we've all been expats as well, and we do. I know I've had times where I felt very lonely here because and I don't have a massive family back in the UK, but you're disconnected from them, and we have lots of young people as well. Like I wish. I still feel young inside, but physically I'm 50. But we've got lots of Gen Z and millennials who are coming to this region, who are leaving their families and their friends behind, and all of a sudden they find themselves in this amazing country with lots of opportunity, and lots of people around them. But what about the connection? And we speak to Mimi a lot, who's also one of the judges, and she says, connection isn't about the number of people around you; it's literally about how deep and meaningful your relationships are around you. So often particularly for the young people, and I think especially in the PR industry, and this is a long and rambling question, I know, but I remember working for Hill & Knowlton, and so many young people there, who enter a world of work that's just a blistering pace now compared to what work was like when I entered it. 30 years ago,
Yeah.
with no email and no social media and no WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Please, WhatsApp.
I know.
You know, so we've got these kids who are entering an industry that is like at breakneck pace.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
also removed from families, really.
Yeah.
And I think mental health isn't just about, you know, whether we're talking about depression or, you know, whether or not people have been diagnosed with ADHD or bipolar or any of those things. It is about how people feel and how they're connected, and everyone has feelings, so it's everyone's, you know, it's everyone's problem to look at. But I think what generally happens, or what can happen, it's not just about how you process your feelings. It's also, you know, that feeling of safety and, you know, things like financial safety.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, it's really easy to get into in over your head in this country. And I
Absolutely
think,
is.
you know, and I remember I spoke to someone yesterday who runs a financial literacy app for employers. So, so that you can get involved and make sure that your employees have, you know, that infrastructure to be able to do planning and budgeting and those things. And she was saying that that she was talking to someone that they were getting 10, 20 calls a day from debt collectors for their team members, and they were getting really frustrated with it, but didn't see that was actually, you know, they had a responsibility to try and help people out of that as well. So I think mental health is one part of it. We know that there's a really strong connection to physical health. We know that there is also strong connection to financial, and then also the people's social health, and a big part of that is community. And quite often we are the community, you know, employers are the community for people. So helping people to set up and it doesn't mean that you have to be involved in every step of that. It's more, you know, these are some tools. This is what we would like you to set some plans. Do it, don't do it. But we've given you some tools to help you on your journey.
How important is it for you as leaders as well then to set the tone? Because it's you know, and again, mental, we've also just recently onboarded an EAP as well. And I love the fact that, you know, we've got, you know, the financial literacy piece in there. You know, there is the 24-hour counselling as well. So all of those tools. But that can be, and there was a recent report by Oxford University actually that said that these programs can be basically as useful as the pool table that nobody dare play on. If the internal culture isn't right, and if the leaders at the top of the organisation don't live that value, give permission to their people to actually use these tools, that the people and the teams don't feel that them using the tool is then going to be weaponized against them. So what's what is the role of leaders in actually setting the tone and the example within their organizations?
Where to start?
Simple question.
Right? So I think as with anything, you know, the behaviour has to be demonstrated from the top down, and unless there is, you know, that fierce kind of, you know, not enforcement, but, you know, that fierce
encouragement.
Kind of, exactly, for you know, I think even things as simple as making safe spaces for people to be able to talk about mental health, and that is really important. Having it as part of the day-to-day language within the office, you know, whether or not people are physically sick or have mental health issues, we should be able to talk about that. But likewise, people should be able to talk about what gets them through that, and, you know, what they're doing. I think it helps to know that you're not the only one. You know, that you're not the lone person in the office that's struggling with that. So I think it's really important top down that it is, you know, that sets the tone for how things are and how people behave.
It strikes me that's really important in the PR and communications industry as well, because you've got internal culture, as we say, and then there is a relationship that our team members and junior members of staff have with the client. Now, some clients can be lovely, and some clients can be on WhatsApp with you at 3 a.m. in the morning demanding
Here's
all
my
sorts.
brief. Why isn't it done yet?
And particularly even junior members of staff that are exposed to that, they don't know where the boundaries are. So it's how important is it to set that psychological safety both within the internal team, but then to make sure that they know that you've actually got their back, and actually just because a client may or may not agree or be happy with the situation, that client can be a demanding client or a good client. Like, there's a lot of stress. I remember it. I literally remember it. Like, being in a park with my daughter when she was 2 on the swings. I've got a client going nuts on a Sunday, going, why are you not answering my WhatsApp message like that?
Yeah.
To the point where I was like, I think I'm going to turn off read receipts on my WhatsApp now. You know,
I have done that.
Yeah. How do we protect our people, in that situation, just so they can give their best work and not be that 45% of people that are saying mental health is impacting their ability to do their job?
I think it's demonstrating it. So not sending emails after 5 p.m. If that's what you expect of your clients, then you set that tone and you start. And there will always be urgent things, and it's not to say that communication has to be cut off, but there are also there are things that probably that can be responded to within a business day, and there are things that are actually urgent and need a critical response. But I think quite often what we see is if people are in the right routines of making sure that information is shared during the business day, then they're more likely to do that and they get into those routines. And actually someone said to me the other day that, agencies are actually really responsible for setting the tone within their clients' offices as well. And they bring the energy and they bring that, the outside into a client's office. And, that equally important to the energy is being organized and having ways of working that then benefit the client as well. And I think, we've certainly had situations with shouty clients or clients that demand things. They don't respond to things until 6 p.m. and then it's urgent. It must be delivered before 9 p.m. And we definitely address that with the client in a really, tactful way. It doesn't have to be aggressive and confrontational. And I think just demonstrating the behavior and setting the tone. And so, for me, that means I don't send emails after 5 p.m. and I'm not, not there kind of on WhatsApp and try to, keep the chatter down on the company WhatsApp group after 5 o'clock. And I think it's just, sometimes it's just giving people that, that opportunity. Like it might not even be an urgent thing that comes up on WhatsApp, but I think it's that giving people a chance to step out and to be in another headspace for a while is so important. You might send a WhatsApp and you don't need an urgent response, but someone has seen that flash up on their screen, and that is it. Just give them the respect and the time to be, to be in their own headspace.
And again, I remember it from my experience. And again, I will say, I was working at Hill & Knowlton, and big shout out to Lucy Harvey. Like when I came from journalism, actually the internal culture, I remember telling her, I was like, I feel like a rescue dog. I've been being savaged for 30 years, and all of a sudden I'm in this culture where there is about, open communication. And my immediate line manager, Stevie, always used to talk about family first. There was quite a few times I had to remind him about his own policy of family first. Step away from the client and, go and be with your family. But with all of these deadlines and with all of this, work-life balance now is almost like a complete myth in every industry.
Yeah.
But how important are those boundaries within the PR industry? Because the client is always going to come on, and is always going to want something. But as you say, I can't remember how many WhatsApp groups I was in.
Yeah.
When I was working in the communications industry. Yeah. So at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 p.m, Saturday, Sunday, every time the phone will ping.
Yeah.
And you have to check your phone to see is this an important one, or is this just something I can ignore? And wherein is that decision that I'm then going to engage or not engage, and you're always on.
Yeah,
that feels like it's actually something that the communications and PR industry actually needs to address.
Yeah, I think that I see that it impacts clients as well. This isn't we feel it because they are feeling it. And so I think there is a certain culture of, quite often our clients are sending messages because they have received a message from someone else within their organization, or, it's not because they are, hanging out, wait until they feel like you've unwound for the day. It's quite often that's their pressure as well. And I think a little bit it comes from having a seat at the table and having that, the respect within an organization that, like legal might switch off, or, might not be responding over a weekend, or, any other of the departments within an organization. Comms won't, comms is a strategic advisor at the table. It's not about that immediate social media post all the time. And I think it is difficult because the balance between strategic and then, and not to say social media is not strategic, but quite often it is very reactionary and it has to go out immediately, and it is about the time. So balancing that is really important.
You raise a really interesting point there as well, which sometimes I think we forget. And I would say I was guilty of forgetting that, because sometimes you feel, we can feel that these things are one way. And again, Mimi Nicklin will talk about empathy. She talk, that's her mission in life is about empathy. But of course, that empathy goes both ways as well. If there's more empathy within the industry, both at the client and because as you say, sometimes the clients, they are
they're under pressure.
They're under pressure, and particularly you're dealing with people that are working on nation building projects sometimes. I mean, there is a lot of pressure and a lot of ambition and a lot of, responsibility to deliver there. So does the empathy need to go two ways? Literally be a two-way street rather than that one-way street?
Absolutely. And I think finding the solutions together is really important. And as much as, we've had those conversations before with clients about, you can't be sending a WhatsApp at 2 a.m. and expecting a response by 5 a.m. It's not going to happen. But also there's a reason that they're asking for that, and how do we then find a solution to help them through that as well. And sometimes it is that there will be junior people who are running very, very big functions, and when I say junior, they're really ambitious, very capable, but have probably not had that behaviour demonstrated to them before, and that opportunity to sit down over a coffee and say, how do we fix this together? I can't have a team of 30 people sitting waiting for your message at 2 a.m. And quite often it stems back to something else that they're experiencing, and they don't have the tools to, someone hasn't modelled the right behaviour to them. And so, giving them that, these are some phrases that you can use in that situation, and kind of working on it together, I think is really important. It seems to work. Doesn't always work, but working on it together and adjusting behaviours together is quite important.
Are things getting better? I mean, a lot of these conversations, and sometimes it feels we're in danger of boss bashing, because there are a number of toxic leaderships out there, certainly within the journalistic profession over the 33 years. I won't say which ones. But are things getting better? Because sometimes we can be a little bit negative, and there are lots of shocking statistics there. But what's the positive side of all of this?
The positive side, I mean, I think talking about it more, that's got to be the biggest positive that is coming out of it. Talking about mental health and making it part of our daily conversation is really, really important. When you ask, is it getting better? I think
is
yes
it getting
and
worse?
No. Well, I mean, 70% is quite, quite a staggering number, and you can look at many different things that go into that. And people just feel, are they, understanding themselves better and then reporting on that, or they feel more comfortable to say yes in a survey, or they, So there's a number of things that go into it, but I do think we've got a really long way to go. There is a lot that needs to happen, and not just within this region, but globally as well. And I think we're on the right start. It's not all doom and gloom. I think there's just a lot that needs to be done, and I think there's a big responsibility within the industry and within agencies and within client side, and even leadership within the country. Everyone has a part to play in it.
Last question, that's looking at the future and the importance of the next generations coming through, because we see Gen Z, we see, the Cigna research this year, their Wellbeing 360 research, put them as the most stressed generation on the planet. At the same time, if organisations want to flourish, then we need the young talent, because they're the people that have grown up with social media, and they're the people that are already using AI. I'm desperately trying to learn it, but they've got all the skills that ensure that sustainability. What are the fundamentals that the PR industry and communications industry needs to put in place to encourage these young people coming in, as opposed to them just burning out? Because again, we see UE, as amazing as it is, and it had some brilliant results in that wellbeing research.
Yes.
But it also, when it looked at the workplace, 98% of respondents in that survey said they were suffering from at least one symptom of burnout. And if I'm burning out, then how are the youngsters,
Yeah.
to not sound too old, coping with all of those stresses? Because we've had time to develop a degree of emotional intelligence, whether I have any or not is a different matter. But
I think it is really tough, because I think it is Gen Z that are coming in and running the social media channels, and they're constantly in it. And we know social media feeds,
comparison,
mental
health struggles,
all of
depression,
that.
anxiety. Yeah.
But we're asking the youth to be responsible for that and to be driving that, because they are the most talented at that, in that area as well. And the same for PR. A lot of we sit there, when we're asking people to be reading all of this, there's such negative information being thrown at us, and and we're asking people to process that, what's going on in this industry and what's happening, and what are we hearing about the environment and global, economics and all of these things. And there is a side of being aware, and there's a point of, being up to date with information, but being immersed in it every day. We really do have a responsibility to protect them. And sometimes protecting is, it's about making sure they have that opportunity to switch off completely, and how important are those WhatsApp groups to actually developing the work for clients. Is that essential? Asking those questions, giving them the time off, and demonstrating the behaviour, I think is important. But then also giving them the tools to discover it in their way. So these EAP programs, and the giving people access to financial tools and all of that. And even physical health, people will have their own goals. Just because something works for me, it doesn't work for someone else. And I think giving people an understanding of just try something, or giving them maybe access to coaches or whatever it might be, so they can discover their own way of managing it, I think is really, really important. Forcing people into, we're going to do a yoga day on Friday. As great as that is, there's not to take away from that. It's just, that just because that works for one person, it doesn't mean that is ticking the box for mental health activities.
Yeah, exactly. No, I totally agree. Dr. Louise Lambert, she talks about gratitude, and we're told all the time that we need to be grateful. Gratitude really annoys her. That's not the tactic for her. It's that recognizing that one size doesn't fit all.
Exactly.
I'm going to ask you one last question. You've been very generous.
You said that already.
Did I? No. I said I was going to get some closing remarks.
Last.
All right. Well, I'm a bit like you. You're too young for Columbo, the detective, but he was always like, just one more question. No, we talk about demonstrating.
Yeah.
How do you demonstrate that? How does Kate look after Kate?
Yeah, so I'll be quite honest with my team when I just need time out. I'm not responding to this now. I'm out, or I'm with my kids, or this is what I'm doing, or when I take leave, I switch off. I'm not that person that's responding to emails, and that is I think it's really important for me anyway. I think physical health has always been really important for me, and I think particularly over the pandemic that really helped me, and so I just give anything a go. But I think
you do some fairly out there stuff as well, don't you?
I'm not really. I look back on that and go, what was I thinking actually? But yeah, so last year did some really great challenges, and still trying to recover from that. I think that, but it's that really being able to switch off. I'm not going, and for me, it doesn't work to go and sit in front of a movie and then be processing all of the things that happened during the day. I need to actually be doing something different. And so I did Kilimanjaro, and I did a couple of, I swam across the Bosphorus, and I did that. And I think that training and there's obviously so much research around how physical health helps mental outputs, but it's also my time to process things and to really think about things in a different way. So I think, and then also giving people the space. So I think I think we have the tools, we have the EAP programs, and we talk about mental health. We have people within the organisation at various levels who will talk about their own mental health issues, and we encourage that. And we also encourage people to think about how other people process information around that as well. So.
All right, I'm going to break my promise.
What? One more question. Yes.
Only because you mentioned Kilimanjaro. I imagine the Wi-Fi signal up on the top of the mountain isn't that strong. What did that give you, or what did you learn on the mountain? What did you bring back down with you on that time?
Oh, really, nothing is urgent. Yeah, I think there were some places where you could get Wi-Fi, and I just didn't I didn't. And, as a mum of 3, that it takes a little bit as well. But I decided that that's what I was doing. And so that's what I did. And I committed to that. And it did help that I had, I was doing that with 3 other friends, and they had access to Wi-Fi. So, I'd get them to send my husband a message like, still alive, we're fine, like, we'll be back. And, so that was fine. It was, we still had that connection. But the world did not end while I was up there. And it was really, really healthy for me to just switch off and not even have the, that I think we're so programmed now to just look at the messages and just look at Teams and just look. I'll just make sure, But the world didn't end, and it won't end if I miss another email, I'm sure.
That really is a mic drop moment. Yeah. So we will close the conversation. Thank you for being so generous with your time today, Kate. And also thank you for agreeing to be a judge for the Mental Awards 2023 and just for your general support of this mission. So thank you for joining us. If you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have, or you want to find out more about the Mental Awards, please check out the links in the show notes. And of course, subscribe on any of the podcast platforms. And of course, you'll be watching this on YouTube. So hit subscribe. Kate, once again, thank you.
Thank you so much.